It's me again. I'm Tina. I remembered that I forgot to introduce myself this morning. I pretty much do that every year. But if you haven't talked to me today yet and don't know me, my name's Tina. I am the president of the KWSQA. Thank you all for coming. I hope you had a good day. Did you have a good day? Yes? Awesome. Just a couple quick things here before we get started with our keynote. So don't forget, after this, if you head upstairs, we would really appreciate if you return your badge and lanyard. If you do that, and if you're planning to come to the social, we will trade you for 2 drink tickets, which I'm sure you could all use at the end of a long day here. But please do return your badge even if you're not planning to attend the social. Also, we would really, really love to get your feedback about how your day was, good, bad, or in between. Again, there's a QR code you can scan upstairs at the registration desk. So, speaking of introducing people, I'd now like to introduce our 2 wonderful keynote speakers this afternoon. Jenny and Jenna have been very busy the last couple days. They ran a full day workshop yesterday, and now they're presenting our keynote, so big thanks to them. I understand that this keynote presentation was inspired by an actual thing that happened to them at a different conference, maybe last year, but I'll let them tell you more about that. So thank you very much. Come on stage.
I'm going to struggle with the microphone.
All right, let's see if this works.
Woohoo! Testing.
All right.
So we may have to just pass the mic back and forth.
Is it working?
I think we're going to go with one mic. Or we can just yell. Can you hear me? All right, let's. I want if they're recording you. Oh yeah.
Keep one mic on? Okay. Oh, wait, turn the volume down. Turn the volume down. Is this?
Turn the volume down on the mic, and then it'll still come into.
But it might make a squeaky noise. Testing!
All right.
Well, are we pretending to use the mics? Are we doing mics?
I mean, I guess they need it for the recording, but we're just going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right, if it starts squealing, we're so sorry.
Yes.
Woo! Good time.
Feels like us.
Thank you so much for coming to Targeting Quality. I hope everyone has had a fantastic couple of days. Can I get just a real quick round of applause for the board members, for the speakers, for the attendees, for the people at the conference? Woo! Yes, woo! Good job, everyone. This is a fantastic conference, and I'm so happy to have been invited this year. We are ready to present our keynote. It is called Stairs, Design Thinking in Context.
So before we get started, if you would like to save the deck, and I suggest you do, just go ahead and scan this QR code. It gives you a view-only link. Opens right up on your mobile or computer. While you scan that, I want to take a brief minute because, you know, I got to do it. Conferences have been really pivotal in my career and literally have gotten me to where I am today. Not just like this stage, but also what I'm doing professionally, finding my footing, all of those kinds of things. And I've built an incredible community of friends and people that I already admired that I can now call friends. So please get involved, speak at a meetup, submit to speak at a conference, keep coming to conferences as an attendee, make connections, do all of that good stuff. It will only benefit you. So there you go. Had to make my pitch.
I love it, I love it. So my name is Jenny Bramble. I am currently the Director of Engineering at a company called Papa, where we are trying to create a world where no one has to go it alone. When I first got hired, my title was Director of Quality Engineering, which I socially changed recently, so ask me about that later, after I've had a couple of drinks. I am a tester by nature and nurture and fascinated by human-computer interaction. I love the way that our meat machines and our metal machines come together and create magic. I have too many cats, too many rabbits, too many quail, and too many stickers in my backpack, so if you'd like some stickers, let a girl know. If you want to tweet at me, tweet Jenny Does Things.
And I am Jenna Charlton. I've been in testing for more than 10 years. I've lost track. I refuse to count at this point. I am a dev advocate, which would better be called a test advocate at CASE. We are a test case management solution. I am a grad student at Miami University, which is down in the US in Ohio. Yes, it's Miami in Ohio. I can explain it. There's a reason. I also have too many stickers in my backpack. I have not too many cats. I only have 2. I love pro wrestling. I love punk rock. My pronouns are they and them. And I am They Wrestle Test on Twitter and Instagram. I mean, They Wrestle Test in all the places.
As Tina kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, this talk came out of a incident? Yeah, we'll say incident. You know, Jenna, why don't you start the story?
Yeah, so I tell this story because I remember it. Thank you for the folks in the room that got it.
The rest of them will get it in a minute.
Yeah, so Jenny and I were at a conference in Germany. We were there together. It was really exciting. We decided to do like a friend date and went to this really beautiful, fantastic restaurant called Restaurant Giulietta. If you're ever in Potsdam, I highly recommend it. We sit down.
Maybe only get 1 bottle of wine or just the wine tasting.
Yeah, so that's where this came from, is that we sit down and I'm like, let's get a bottle of champagne. So I order a bottle of champagne. Jenny then says, well, we're doing the tasting menu. We need the wine pairing. The sommelier liked us because how could you not be entertained by the 2 of us? And keeps bringing us more wine. And then we make our way back to the hotel and stumble in.
We took an Uber. It's okay. No one drove.
No one drove. I'm not driving in Germany. I can barely drive in the US. But we stumble in. Jenny is wearing very tall heels and proceeds to try and go upstairs.
You might not be able to tell from this picture, but these are stairs designed by someone that doesn't like humans. The stairs are a little bit too short, they're a little bit too wide, they're a little bit too steep, and they don't have a back on them, which means if you're using any kind of mobility aid, there's a chance it's gonna get stuck in there. So I'm walking down the stairs like any normal person would do, and suddenly I am no longer walking down the stairs. I have introduced my face to the floor. I still have a scar on my leg. I have fallen down the stairs and did not forgive them. I still have not forgiven these stairs. And fortunately, unfortunately, Jenna and Bailey Hannah had to listen to me complain about these stairs for the next 4 days.
Yeah. Also, this is not like a normal person would do. Let's just be clear about that.
So we crafted this talk thinking about design context, and we wanted to start out with some design. So Jenna, will you make me some stairs?
I will make you stairs.
Awesome. Okay, they have to go from the top floor down to the bottom floor.
Got it?
They should be nice and wide. I like a good wide set of stairs.
Okay.
Railings, if you want.
Okay.
They're going in an existing building, though, so you do need to make sure that they fit in the existing building.
Okay.
What you got for me?
I built you stairs.
What?
I built stairs.
What is that?
They're stairs.
My property values! those aren't going to work. Like, what is going on there? No, let's try this again. New requirements.
Okay.
I still need to get to the door on the first floor.
Okay.
And I forgot, my grandma's going to be moving in, and she uses a walker and a wheelchair, so could you make it wheelchair accessible for me?
I built you stramps.
How did you make it worse?
It's not worse. It's both.
How did you make it worse? They're not good enough. That is absolutely not good enough.
So really, all jokes aside, and there are a lot of them, this talk came from this evolution of ranting about stairs, to thinking critically about stairs, to realizing that they are a fantastic way to talk about design thinking and context and understanding the difference between good enough quality, because we talk about that all the time, right? Good enough quality, that's our MVP, and what actually is good enough that our users can truly use it, that it doesn't harm them, that it really solves the problem. So to get to the heart of this, we're going to start with what we'd like to call cognitive bias bingo.
Now, you have probably played cognitive bias bingo without recognizing you're playing cognitive bias bingo. This is where you treat them like Pokemon and you try to collect them all, preferably in one meeting. If you want a copy of this bingo card to play in meetings, don't do that. Your boss will be very upset. You can either grab it on that QR code or it is in the presentation that we linked earlier. Yeah. So I have put a lot of my favorite biases on this because that's who I am as a person. We were talking in a talk earlier about decision fatigue, where the more decisions you have to make, the worse you are at making decisions. There's the just world hypothesis, where everything happens for a reason. If I'm good enough, it'll be fine. Status quo bias, confirmation bias, mere exposure, like all of these fantastic biases. We're going to talk about 4 of them specifically and how they relate to design thinking, design concepts, and the couple of concepts that we're going to go over specifically. We're going to talk about recency bias, anchoring bias, bounded rationality, and framing effect. Let's start with recency bias. This is where we believe that future events are going to resemble our most recent experiences. Our brains are incredibly good at pulling from short-term memory. It's our favorite thing. It's right there. Just have to grab it right off the shelf and slide it in. But that means we're neglecting some of the things that have happened in the past. We're not pulling from our long-term memory. So when we are doing things, when we're thinking about bugs, when we're thinking about our testing, we don't want to just think about the most recent events. We want to ask ourselves, are we actually considering all the events? Or are we just considering the most recent things that have happened? The next one I've got here is bounded rationality. And this is, okay, so spoiler alert, they're all my favorite. Every single bias is my favorite bias. But bounded rationality is where we select something satisfactory rather than the optimal thing. Where we pick something that's good enough and not something that's actually good for us. We have cognitive limitations, we have time limitations, our mental load. All of these things weigh on us and make it harder to continue to think about something, to continue to pick something. Again, decision fatigue plays into this a whole lot as well. When we are thinking about our stuff, we should be thinking, is it good enough or is it actually good? Is it actually doing what users want? Are we actually getting to a place where the things we're creating, the things we're testing, are the things that are going to make a difference in people's lives?
Next thing we want to introduce here is this idea of anchoring bias. And I want you to keep all of these in mind because we're going to go through some thoughts and behaviors that we do in testing and in design. And these are all things that we kind of need to keep in context as we do all of that. So anchoring bias, the first information we take in, the first bit, is what we set our anchor on. It's what we build the framework of the information on that we continue to gather, continue to learn. Our first iteration, when anchoring bias is at play, often informs our second. Probably saying, well, that's iteration, right? It's supposed to be like, you have the first one and you make it better. Maybe, but is our first iteration actually good? Do we want it to inform our second one? Or do we want to learn from our first one and say, ooh, that was bad. Maybe our second one shouldn't be informed by our first one. So we tend to use this as the stone that we build on. And then, are you thinking creatively when you iterate? Or are you rebuilding the same thing over and over again in a new way? Are you just changing the shape, changing the color, changing the placement, changing the workflow, but it's still the same not good idea? And then the framing effect. The framing effect is fascinating. And I gotta tell you, we've been talking about this since the 70s. So I'm getting my master's in experience design, which is this very unusual discipline, and you're probably going, well, what the heck is experience design? Hi, this is experience design. It's about designing for the way humans experience the world. So the framing effect is how we frame experience. It's how we frame the way information is presented. And here's the wild thing. We can either intentionally frame for our user and give them that frame that they're thinking in by giving it to them in our application. There's a lot of ways we do that. By the way, the news cycle is great at doing that. It gives them a bias and it becomes their frame. That's how they reference things. But we can also inadvertently frame things in our brains and make it a pinpoint. So we lose the ability to see outside of it. We lose that context. There's a lot more to this. I'm not going to get deep into it. But I want you to think about kind of what's the frame for the information we're talking about. Our brains take shortcuts. And that's actually what makes our brains really cool. It's what makes our brain more powerful than anything else on Earth. The reason that we are better than an AI, sorry for AI folks in the room, is because we have the ability to create relationships in our brains through these shortcuts that nothing else can do. It's also why we can do things like create visual metaphor, where we take two independent ideas that are unrelated and find ways to make them related, because they share a frame and those shortcuts help us do that. So when you are looking at a problem, are you actually looking at the problem or are you looking at the framing of the problem? Or do we need to reframe it? Do we need to readjust it altogether because we've missed the mark? Thinking about example mapping, when we break down a user story, if our questions don't match the actual problem that's being solved, if our examples are various stories that we kind of break down out of this don't seem to feel like they're aligning with the problem that was brought to us in the first place, then our frame is wrong. We framed this question incorrectly. We have to go back to it. So what I want to talk about, what we want to talk about,
I mean, I want to talk about it too, so
yeah,
that's right.
But what we want to talk about is the difference between design thinking versus design. And you're probably saying, well, of course design thinking is different than design. Design is about like, make it pretty and make it look good and the colors work, but there's more to it than that. And design thinking is very little about designing something and far more about how we approach solving a problem.
The first concept that we want to talk about with design thinking and context is learnability. And we've got this noted as highlighting the path. Our couple of biases here, anchoring and recency. We want our users to be able to come familiar with our systems very, very quickly. I'm sure everyone here has used something and you're like, wow, that is not how I expected that to work. That is not where I expected that button to be. Interesting. Systems need learnability. They need to be able to tell users how to use them, take advantage of these cognitive biases, of patterns that we already have, and say, hey, here's how you can learn to use this system. Here's something it's like. Here's how we can use it well. As testers, we very, very much want to be thinking not just what are the requirements, are we doing the requirements, but also what's the user experience? How is the user going to experience this for the first time? I know with my developers, Lord love them, they get their brains totally wrapped around the requirements, and we forget to step back and say, how is somebody brand new to this going to experience this? And as testers, that is something very important that we bring to the table. How learnable is the software? How clear is the path? Have we highlighted it? Is there something we can change maybe that'll make it even more easy to learn and learn well?
So I want you to picture with me, keeping all of these things in context, that we're in the ancient world. And I am the first person to ever think, you know, maybe we don't have to live at ground level. Maybe we could go up a level. So I figured out how to like build something above, but I don't know how to get up there. So I'm like, well, there's ladders, those exist, but I don't know if a ladder is gonna be so comfortable to have to use multiple times a day. What if I carry something? What if somebody's disabled? You know, it might not be the best solution. So I pull out a napkin or parchment or...
Rock.
Yeah.
It's definitely rock. You're going to chisel it on the back of a rock.
I'm going to chisel it on the back of the rock. So I'm going to pull out my rock and I'm start chiseling, and I chisel out the shape. And I've come up with this shape because I know that platforms exist. So like, what if I had a bunch of platforms and those got me up? But like maybe they're platforms that they're small enough that like you could step. Like, okay, all right, I got an idea. And I go to the builder and I say, hey, builder, we're going to build this thing called stairs. And I explain it to him, and he is thoroughly confused, but says, okay, let me take your stone and, and see what I can do with this. And the builder uses his own anchoring bias within the frame that he has. And he says, yeah, platforms. Okay, well, I know we can put like statues on platforms. So what if I make just a series of raised platforms? He gives it to me. He says, here, how's this work? You know, it's getting there. But there's some problems. Like, there's big holes. Somebody's probably going to fall through. No.
It's me. I'm going to fall down the stairs.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If anything's going to fall, it's going to be her.
I have not fallen at all this week. Yeah.
Woo! The day is not over.
Meet me in the bar for a drink later.
At least there's no stairs to the room. She can take the elevator. But, you know, so there's these gaps. There's a wall, but there is no wall on the other side. There's no railing. So, like, there's all sorts of reasons that this wouldn't work, especially, like, by the way, there's circles. And, like, I have little feet, so my feet might go in the middle, but, like, Jenny's feet aren't going in the middle, mainly the boots. So, like, there's still some problems, but we're getting there. So we've iterated. First version, it's just a drawing. You know, just stone tablet, scratch off. And then we get to, oh, sorry, somebody's trying to take a picture. So we've got something based on my frame. Now we've got the next version based on the builder's frame. So we've iterated, because there's definitely iteration here. But it's not quite there.
And that brings us to fit for purpose. Is it fit for purpose? And here we're thinking bounded rationality, anchoring, and recency. Does the thing do what it's supposed to do? Not necessarily, again, what the requirements tell it to do, but does it do what the users need? Does it do what we think it's going to? Is there a moment where we can step back and say, oh, we're following the requirements, but it's not usable, it's not the thing that we need it to do, it's not really meeting the objectives? Again, a lot of times we get wrapped up in the requirements and we forget about the people at the other side of them. We forget that we're building for people and we're not just building. So when we think about fit for purpose, we very much want to step back and say, we have goals in mind. We've got requirements. Is what we've built actually taking those requirements and taking us closer to our goal? Or is it creating something that users are not going to like? We've all done this. We've all put something out there and been like, they're going to love me. And they did not. They did not love you. Let's try not to do that. Let's try and think and ask ourselves as we're testing, is this fit for purpose? Is this doing what we expect it to? And as testers, we should be asking that question. We very much need to be the voice of the user in a lot of ways and say, are we creating what they need or what we want?
And when we think about fit for purpose and those circular platforms, this is where we know, like, hey, we've got to start, but we certainly haven't met the actual need. We haven't solved the real problem. But there's this other piece of this. And I'm saying retrofit here, this, you know, creating new problems. This is probably not a retrofit. I'll explain what this probably is in a minute. But the framing effect tends to play into how we go about solutioning problems in an existing application, or finding a solution to a problem that already exists, maybe that we haven't finished building for. Perhaps we don't have the right skills to build what we need to, so we've got to find another way to do it. And we're like, well, if they take 6 extra button clicks, because nobody here knows how to build it the right way, we can make this work. So when we retrofit, we create new problems and we make things more difficult for our users. From solving one problem, we break another. So here's the deal. I think this is worth pointing out. This is real. It is from a group called Stairs, designed by people who are not afraid to die.
All of the stairs in this presentation, except I think one set, are real. And the set that isn't real is not the one you're expecting. These are all actual stairs that we have been sending each other for 3 months.
Yeah, oh yeah. But here's what happened, and here's why I say this is important. So you can see, like, there's a step up, and then a step, and then a step down. If you don't know that step up is coming, you are definitely going head over tea kettle down those stairs. You'll probably also notice the angle is really weird. Like, it feels like these are really steep, right? So somebody built this whole building wrong, and one floor was put 6 inches too low. or too high. And they said, well, you know, we can't fix that. That's an awful lot of money. Who's heard that before? So instead, they just added an extra step to make sure that the pitch, the angle of the pitch is legal, because there's always building codes, and the stair depth fits into building codes. This, by the way, somebody died on these stairs. I guarantee it. I mean, I know that for
correct
sure,
is
but-
the best kind of correct.
But I want you to think about all of these different things we've talked about and go back to iteration. You're probably going, okay, this is weird, this is a lot, but it's going somewhere, I promise. I hope that you can see the way we've built to this. First, were what we think of as stairs conventionally. Second set, those platforms. Thinking about the framing effect of stairs don't exist yet. We have no context for this. So we've anchored all of our thinking on platforms, knowing that those platforms are not really a solution, knowing that it's got to be something more than the sketch. We get here. But you can see this is still platforms, right? Now we've gone from these elevated raised platforms on poles to slabs. So these are slabs stacked. But we found a problem. And instead of doing what we did in the death stairs, we said, well, we don't have enough space. So we found a new solution. And by the way, this new solution is something we've never seen before. We've never done this. We made a spiral. We recognized that we had a space problem. So we had to go find a new solution outside of the frame of reference we've created for ourselves, outside of the anchor we've created for ourselves. And we said we've shifted it. This is why spiral staircases exist, by the way. Like, they terrify me. I will never use a metal spiral staircase. But this is a solution because it takes up less space and it lets us get that elevation that we need without having to move everything else because of a set of stairs. So I just want you to kind of keep thinking about that as we look at this one.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is falling in love, which I love. I love love. Love is amazing. Falling in love with your design is not amazing. We put a little piece of ourselves into everything we create. And then we say things like, you are not your code, you are not your test plan, you are not your work product. But we kind of are. There's always a little bit of you because you're the only one that could have created the thing that now exists. Other people could have created something similar, but you're the only one that could have created this exact thing. And sometimes we fall in love with it because we've created something beautiful and it's wonderful. But we need to be able to step back and actually edit. We need to be able to say, this is wonderful, but it's not fit for purpose. It's not quite doing what we need. It's not perfect. We have to be able to step back and actually critically look at our designs, critically look at the things we've created. These stairs are gorgeous. Jenna and I talked for 10 minutes trying to figure out if they're going up or down.
I have no idea.
I still don't know. I think we're looking up, though.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
But anchoring bias, however you saw this the first time, whether it's going up or down, that's probably what you always see.
And now that I've said it, you're like, oh yeah, no, that's up, that's up. Maybe, I don't know. And if you look at these stairs, like, they're not accessible. That's tile. That's gonna get wet and I'm gonna fall down them. People that are stable are probably gonna fall down these stairs. But they are gorgeous. If these were actually in a place where it got cold and snowy and rainy and icy, you would die. Like, you just would die. They're awful. But they're beautiful, and looking at them, I kind of fall in love with them. But if I was creating them, I'd want to be able to take a step back and say, is this fit for purpose? Is this doing the thing that we need? As a tester, I break a lot of hearts. I walk up to developers and I say, hey, this beautiful thing that your optimistic, amazing mind made, my pessimism is going to tear it down just a little bit. And that's fun. But we also need to be able to do this with our own things, to step back and say, have we done what we expected? Have we done what we needed? And are we able to actually edit and be kind about it?
There's one more little piece that I want to throw out here, because we talked about it a little bit today in a couple of talks. We get feedback from various places. And the most important feedback to me is coming in from the help desk, technical support, and user experience research. If all of your users say, I hate it, it sucks, please change it, you're making me sad, it's really easy to say, well, they don't know what they're doing, there's poor training, they just don't understand the system, if we could just help them do it better, if they knew what I knew. And I'm saying this as somebody who continually told a CTO that he was wrong, that we should listen to the feedback. If they tell you you're wrong, you're wrong. That's just the end of the story. Even if you love it, even if it's beautiful, they're not our precious snowflakes, they're our software, and they're here to make us money. Because it all comes down to that, right? So sometimes we have to kill our babies. Not really kill our babies.
Oh, gosh.
But you know what I mean. Those who've heard the phrase before know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Edit. We have to
I'm
edit.
gonna go run away. I should edit that. But the final thought on iteration here, because I love iteration, by the way. Like, I didn't at first. I really didn't. I hated iteration when I started in a design program and was told, iterate, iterate, iterate. I'm like, I don't know how to iterate. I don't even know how to draw.
It's so time-consuming, though.
I had to draw, but you've never even heard this. I had to draw 100 different, it was 100 squares. And I was only allowed to use 10 dots. And every single square had to be different.
I no longer want a master's in anything.
Yeah, I don't draw, let alone figure out, like, I am not that creative. But I learned, I got it, like it made this hit. Anyway, iteration. Agile tells us to iterate. Here's the problem. We iterate on what we already did. We don't go back and revise what we did. We just said, oh, well, we said we were going to iterate, we're going to build it in phases. We built phase 1. Phase 1 is done, sprint 1's over, go to sprint 2. It's like, but wait a minute, I don't like sprint 1. Sprint 1's bad. Sprint 1 has bugs. Sprint 1 is ugly. Sprint 1 doesn't feel like it's actually solving the problem. How can we just go to sprint 2? We didn't iterate on sprint 1.
We can't afford sprint 2. We just have to skip it. We can't afford it.
But it's not good.
We've already built it. We can't afford to change it.
It's where Agile falls now. We lose the opportunity to continually revise. We do it in design. Like UX designers, they do this. And in fact, it's part of their practice. But the rest of us, we don't do this. So I want you to look at this design. And I think you can see every image that's come before it exists in here. We've got the stone. Like, you can see that, like, gradual incline. We've got platforms, because really a step is a platform. We have the spiral. We figured out how to overcome the space issue. And now we figured out what reality looks like. And we've said, okay, it needs a back. It can't be that shallow, because that's exhausting. That's 1 billion stairs. Like, every one of those steps, they're too short. And now we added in railings, we added in lighting so that you don't just fall over the side into a pit of darkness. Like, there's things here that make this real and workable. This is iteration. It's not building one step at a time. It's revising and editing and shifting when we discover what works and what doesn't work. We love to say we do that. We love to do retros. But we have to retro what we're actually building, and we have to take action on all of that, or we never get to software that actually solves problems.
Speaking of not solving problems, the next concept we want to talk about is leaving dead ends. This is trapping your users in places they can't get out of. My designer friends call this a design crash sometimes, when your application doesn't quite let the user proceed or they get stuck somewhere, it's not flowing appropriately. I think of applications as stories. They're little choose-your-own adventures, and our users are the main characters. Do we have a plot? Do they know where they're going? Do they know how to get out of things? If there's an error, is it reasonable? Or do they have to just force close the app and start all the way over? When we are testing things, when we're trying to figure out if this is working appropriately, think about the story. What story are you trying to tell? What path are you trying to take? How is that going to look? And remember, dead ends are tech debt. A lot of times we think about tech debt as, oh, we didn't do this technical thing, we don't have this, we don't have that, as far as code. But this is also a form of tech debt. It's a way of leaving something that we're going to have to pay for in the future, either with user frustration or with time actually fixing it. It is a legitimate form of tech debt, and it's something we should be talking about in retros, and something we should be talking about whenever we get to the end of sprint 1 and we're like, hey, are there any bugs left? Maybe this isn't a bug, but it's certainly something we need to resolve. So what about the original stairs? We're gonna go back to these stairs.
They're not that bad.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yeah, these
Yeah,
are.
there.
What went wrong here? They were absolutely creating new problems. Before, we could get to the bottom floor. Now we can't. Before, we had a nicer looking house. And now we've got stairs going up through the middle of it, and I'm pretty sure I would hit my head if I tried to go up them. And they weren't fit for purpose. They passed the requirements. They did the thing that I asked for. You can get upstairs, but not well, not good. If I'm a tester and I'm looking at this and I'm reading the requirements, I could say, yeah, okay, check it off. It passes all the requirements. But it's not good enough. It's fine. But you want to bring these things up. You want to start talking about, hey, it passes the requirements, but it does it in a really bad way.
Nothing was going to make that house look better. The stairs just made it look worse.
Okay, valid point.
So the second set of stairs. Not a lot to talk about here, right? Like this is really something. But here's what I want you to take away. This is caused by a lack of foresight. We believe in just in time, we believe in not over planning, but I guarantee you these exist because someone took these plans to a board, or like, the architecture, whoever approves building plans, and said, hey, we've got this new building and here's where the stairs are going to get into the building. And they said, well, wait a minute, where's your ramp? And I said, well, I don't know, we didn't think about it. There's no space for it. And they said, well, you have to have a ramp. That's the rule. Like in the US, that's the rule. I'm sure it's the rule here too. So they went from, we're just excluding a group, to nobody can use this. Because like, if you're able-bodied, I guess you can walk up the ramp, but you certainly can't walk up those stairs. And somebody in a wheelchair is not going to use that ramp. That turn is way too tight. All I can picture is grandma in a rascal scooter and it just toppling over the side trying to make that turn.
I mean, I imagine it's like pinball. You just boing, 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 one side to the other. Like, stramps are the worst.
But they did it because they didn't have space. And instead of actually solving the problem, they shoehorned in this solution. They just kind of like, just make it work. If you aren't thinking about things like accessibility from the requirements level, you wind up with things like this. You kind of shoehorn it in later. Or even worse, you buy one of those accessibility overlays that, will not work at all.
So what does this mean for you? Now, this is the part of the keynote where we do the call to action, where we say, here's what I want you to walk out the door and do tomorrow. Tomorrow's a work day, right?
I think so.
I don't know, I'm on PTO. So the first thing I want y'all to do is to start using this language. We've given you some phrases, and if you grab the QR code and grab the slide deck, you can read back over them. Trigger phrases are really important. I use them all the time at work. If you say something over and over and over, it's going to start to become part of the language of your team. So if you say, are we leaving dead ends? Is this fit for purpose? It's going to start triggering things in people's minds, and they'll be like, oh, fit for purpose. I know what that is. And you'll start hearing other people say it, which is super fun, because then you don't have to. And you're like, whole team quality. That's amazing. So start using this language with your team. Introduce these concepts and say, is it fit for purpose? Is it learnable? Are we leaving dead ends? All of these things are wonderful to say to folk. And really ask yourself if you're creating good software. Are our teams creating good software, or are we creating good enough software? One of the major things I work on at work is an admin tool. And we all know that admin tools are a place where ideas go to die because no one cares about internal users. They're going to be fine. They can, oh man, y'all, if y'all saw the search on the
They'll
admin
figure
tool,
it out.
whew, the CTO couldn't figure it out. It was real bad. So are we creating good software, or are we just creating software that's going to do what we maybe need it to? And these are questions we can ask. We absolutely can ask this. I'm giving everyone in this room permission to ask if this software is good or if it's fine. And I want you to advocate for your user experience. I want you to adjust your testing to be user-centric. Every line of code is a human, especially in my line of work. We write code, we make software to be used by people. They are the reason that we're doing any of this. So as we're testing, as we're moving through our sprints, we should be thinking about our users and putting them first and saying not just, is the software doing what software does, but is it solving problems? Is it creating new problems? Is it helping the user achieve their objectives? And I want you to play cognitive bias bingo. Again, don't bring a card into your meetings and start putting tickets down because your boss will not like that. But I want you to start really thinking about it and saying, what biases are at play here? Are we using these biases for good, or are we using them for evil? Because you can do both. Anchoring bias is fantastic if you want to train someone how to do something, if you want to make something more learnable. Framing is fantastic if you want to use things that already exist to inform users about your pieces. But we can also use them in negative ways, and we went over a ton of that. So user-centric testing. Think about your biases. Start using this language and really bring it into your teams and say, hey, let's write good software, not just good enough.
So Jenny likes to be really serious about it, but like, I give you permission to say your software sucks. I give you permission to say your design sucks. I don't want to tell your boss that, but like, I give you permission to call it out fully.
Maybe different phrasing? I'm the person that gets told our design sucks all the time, so. But they're right. Like, you can say what we're building is not good. You want to be careful how you say it. Like, don't use up all your political clout at one time. But you're right. Someone has to say it. And I nominate all of us.
So all that being said, these are some stairs that we saw the day after Jenny fell down the stairs and started taking pictures of every stair we see. Every stair we see? I don't know. There's a way to say that it makes sense, but I don't know what it is right now. But anyway, we would love to take your questions. We'd love to take your comments and have a little chat about this craziness.
Before we take comments and questions, what are you doing at the social in a few minutes?
I totally forgot to tell you about this. So I am making a video. I want Tales from the Bug Hunt. Just come tell me your favorite bug. I just have to like put a mic on you and record you. But we'll talk about that at the social. I want to see you all up there. Hear your favorite bug.
So I think we've got a couple of minutes for questions. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I have more stair pictures for you.
Oh, Lord of mercy. We need to have like a group where we all just send terrifying stares to each other.
Yes. Oh,
The Winchester Mansion, because she was scared of all the ghosts from the people that were killed by the rifles her family made. I love horror movies. Anyone else got anything? Oh, sir, yes, sir.
Which was the fake stairs?
I don't remember. One of them is AI generated, but most of them are actual stairs.
I think there's actually two, because the platforms aren't technically stairs, like the circle platforms, but the fake stairs are the white AI generated spiral. Yeah, the rest of them are real. And there were stairs that were more terrifying that I decided not to use. Like there's stairs that there's no rails. They're just metal pods essentially, but it goes down an unknown amount of floors, and it's just like this big square that circles down. And there's no light in the bottom, so you just fall into a pit for an unknown amount of time that you will be following. I just assume that you just never stop falling there. That's like the Alice in Wonderland, like, nightmare.
My particular favorite type of stairs are witch stairs. Witch stairs, like witches. Sorry. And what those are is so if you cut the stairs in half, like they have down, up, down, up, down, up. And the theory there was that witches weren't able to walk up them. So you would put them in your house to protect the upstairs from witches. America's weird. Come visit. Any other questions? Any comments? Sir?
Given this talk, what's your thought about the common advice, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good?
So the question is, what are our thoughts about don't let perfect be the enemy of good? Jenna?
So I have a lot of feelings about this.
So many feelings.
I think that we have devalued what good is. And we've started to accept that good is whatever we can get done in the time we were told we have to get it done. I don't think perfection is achievable. I don't think it makes sense to go for it. But I do think that if we are leaving our users behind, or if we're hurting our bottom line because our users can't complete workflows, don't understand how to use the software, get trapped, crashes, all of those potential things, that it's not an acceptable level of quality. And I think we've just gotten to the point where we've been bullied into saying that something is good or good enough when we in our hearts know that it's not. There's so many examples of that kind of software out there. I think, to be honest, I think Twitter, because I refuse to call it what it's called now, I think Twitter is an example of that. We've just accepted that this is good. Even before it was acquired, we accepted that it was good. And it had a lot of issues. So, yeah.
We often use the phrase perfection, or perfection is the enemy of good. Oh, Lord have mercy. as a weapon. We say, well, we have to get something out there. We have to get something out there so we can see what's going on. If we wait for it to be perfect, we'll never release it. There is a balance between done, perfect, good. Like there is a level of good enough that isn't perfect, but does accept all of our users, brings everyone into the fold and says anyone who needs to use this software can use this software. And that's where we really want to be.
So you talked about revise.
Mhm.
And so I kind of wrote down revise versus refactor. Are they, in your head, different? Because I think they're different.
I think they're different.
So the question is revise versus refactor. Do you have thoughts? Do you want me to take this one?
You start, I'll follow up if you say something different.
Oh, Lord have mercy. So revise versus refactor. To me, a refactor is taking something that already exists and recreating it to do the same sort of thing, but hopefully better. And when we're revising it, we're actually looking at what it does and we're saying, is it doing the right thing? Can we make it do something different? Can we make it better? A refactor to me is not necessarily changing any of the behavior so much as changing the underlying underpinnings.
So are we doing ourselves a disservice by saying refactor all the time versus...
I think we are. So it was asked, are we doing a disservice by saying refactor instead of revise? And I absolutely agree, but I want to take it a step further because there's a difference between refactor, revise, and refine. And refactor, we're working with something that exists, optimizing it. Revise, we're iterating, and we are intentionally critiquing what we've already done. But refine, all we're doing is we're taking what we've already done, and we're not critiquing it. We're just building on it or chiseling away from it. But that's a different thing than a critique. And anyone here who has a designer that they work with, go talk to them about what iteration means and ask them to see their Figma playground. Like it's fascinating to see all of the abandoned pieces, and they won't look at all alike, but they're all for the same thing, because they're all these different iterative ideas that have nothing to do with each other but solve the same problem, because they want to come up with as many different things to play with as possible so that they can get to the right thing. It's really, really interesting, and I think we, as Agilists, we need to use that to inform our thinking more.
I think I saw one more hand in the back.
It was a very similar question. It was basically, how do you go from, with all of these biases, how do you stop iterating and then approach the same problem over and over and over again to come up with these?
So with all the different biases, how do you approach a problem a little bit different? How do you iterate on it? And I think a lot of that comes down to recognizing that bias exists. Like, we're not just talking about social bias, we're talking about cognitive bias here. Recognize it exists. Try and spot it in the sorts of work that you're doing and where it might crop up. You will be surprised how much bias you are operating on at any given moment, because your brain is really tired. Like, you might not feel tired, but your brain is taking all kinds of shortcuts to try and get somewhere. And sometimes these are great. Sometimes this is fantastic. But sometimes it's going to cause you to miss something, and it's going to cause you to do unintentional harm. I hope it's unintentional harm.
There's also a very nuts and bolts answer to this. There are some activities that you can do. One of them is really simple, just embracing the silly. And this is literally like, get everybody in a room or a virtual session, but make sure their cameras are on and shake it out. Like, we want to get as physically absurd as we can so that we feel silly, because we change our mindset when we change our physical presence at the moment. So, like, you go on a walk, your mind starts moving. You dance, your mind starts moving. But when you feel silly together, you are more comfortable throwing out the nonsense ideas, because sometimes the nonsense ideas lead us to real things. The other thing is the what if. Like, what if this was a boat? What if this was a teapot? What if this was a shoe? Like, how would it solve the problem then? And it sounds weird, but you put yourself in a new headspace. You're not going to come to the solution, but you're going to break those biases with your thinking, because you've in your short-term memory, because there's all sorts of neuroscience here, in your short-term memory, you've broken the anchor and you've reframed. So now you can start thinking more creatively.
I think we've got time for one more, so.
You showed that even though meeting design requirements doesn't necessarily result in a usable product, how do you respond to an environment that says, oh no, the problem is that you just didn't spec up your design requirements enough?
Question is, how do you respond to an environment in which someone says you didn't spec out your design requirements enough, you didn't give enough information, you quit your job? So the serious answer there is, that sounds like a combative sort of environment. And when you're in an environment where people are pitted against each other, where it's always someone else's fault and you're not working collaboratively, you are going to have a hard time making good software. So the things that I tend to do when I'm in those situations is I try and build relationships. And if I can build relationships with the people that are combative, if I can build relationships with the people that my company has pitted against each other, then a lot of times, instead of saying, well, you just didn't put enough specs in there, they'll say, can we talk about this? Can we refine it a little bit more together and start working together? That's a very kumbaya answer, and I recognize it's not going to work everywhere, but you can always do some relationship building that will help pull people's heads out of that fearful, psychologically unsafe space and try and create like a little bubble of safety.
Also, example mapping. Because you're gonna iterate onto new requirements by doing example mapping. Just calling out.
It's been some real good talks today, y'all. Woo.
Yeah.
So we are at time. If I could get another round of applause for the conference, for all of y'all, for the board members, for everyone. Thank you so much. So join us for a social in the bar upstairs. Don't forget, return your badges. This is important. Even if you don't want the tickets, return your badges.
She's just doing your job for you.
Yeah, so everything she said. Thank you, Jenny and Jenna, for making the trip up and presenting.